Good evening, part 4. And I do believe, I don't know. I got to learn. I have a lot to learn about this. I would love to introduce video or bring up a website like mine. Anyway, this tonight is the story of Raise Your Resilience. I think you're seeing that somewhere. I'm not, other than the title up here, whatever. So, make yourself comfortable, listen up. I'm going to tell you the story of Raise Your Resilience, which is rather intimately acquainted with my own because it was born out of my healing. In 2011, I'm going to start out with my story. In 2011, I had a nervous breakdown on a call. And if you're a volunteer firefighter, especially in a smaller district, the odds that you're going to encounter somebody you know on a call are high. And I'm going to say, in my experience, that number has been kind of high. Most of them have been, I'll say the good majority of them have been fatalities. Anyway, that's what's going to happen. And so on Christmas Day in 2011, and this story is on my website at www.raiseyourresilience.com. My blog is called My Words, and the story is The Perfect Storm. And I'm not going to long version that here. I just want you to know that on Christmas Day, there was a call. And when I showed up on the scene, because they don't give that information on your page or anything like that, I knew immediately who it was. I also suspected there was a fatality because the helicopter that was carrying this, or the helicopter had never left. I was getting updates on the air chopper, and usually that means that when I pulled up, I should say it this way. When I pulled up, the ambulance that was holding this person was still there, which means that the helicopter has not left, because if they don't have a patent heartbeat, they will not leave the hospital. So they're waiting for us to confirm that that's true. And considering the number of minutes that I had been traveling to get to this call on Christmas Day, things weren't looking good. And in the end, they were not. Anyway, it was the straw that broke this camel's back. 16 years of doing this, of being to all this human vulgarity that I have been to in my career as a firefighter, EMT, and rescue operator, on top of all of the stuff I have been through because of my trauma, which started way, way, way back when, broke. So basically, I had an A score. My A score is 4. And childhood emotional neglect, some abuse, sexual abuse, all of that set the stage. Now, let's think about human development. Okay, first there's connection to your own body. You're out of the womb, and pretty much in the womb is what's going on. Your sensations. There's no thoughts because there's no words, and so really what you have is a lot of sensational living, just your own senses. But for the first 9 months, is I don't know what level of consciousness, where it starts, but you're in amniotic fluid, and then suddenly out you come, whack, you get hit, and now you're breathing, and okay, well, that hurt. So now my backside stings, and I can't even think my backside stings. Now I'm introduced to this new world. And, the temperature is now probably not what I was in. And now I get wrapped up, which might be constricting, which it probably was in the womb, but okay, maybe. So I approximated, but drier and different. And now this voice that I heard from inside the fluid, I hear outside. Things have changed. Now, I can't think of these things because I don't have any words. I don't even have episodic memory at that time. All I have is the sensation of my own body. And now I feel other bodies touching my body. That's the first thing, is connection, physical connection, providing it happens. And in that process of connecting to the body, I am connecting to somebody else. Those are attachment and attunement. And John Bowlby is the pro on attunement and what happens when mom and infant are not in tune with each other and don't attach to each other. Okay, then what? Because I'm supposed to learn to self-regulate on the basis of that, and I'm still trying to connect A to B, and okay, how is that working? This is starting to create a situation in my nervous system that's beginning to already speak the word threat, which I don't even understand. What my nervous system knows is this is threatening. It's expecting this because this is hardwired into us. We're social creatures. We're mammals. This attachment, this attunement. And when this is going on and this is going on, this is not happening. And this is not health and growth. This is health and growth. And from this is born the ability to develop trust. Out of trust is built the ability to self-regulate. And then on top of that, the last developmental stage of the teen years is love and sex. What's that going to do for a teenager when the hormone train comes in? Yeah, baby. And that's when he discovers dad's Playboy collection. That's what women are for. Yep. So anyway, carry all of that forward then. Started drugs, age 13. Spent 8 years doing that. And 3 years doing alcohol. Because drugs got to be an issue, to say the least. Okay, carry that all forward. All of that is still carrying and driving the bus. And when those attachment and attunement needs aren't met, guess what your relationships become? And if the relationship isn't doing that, guess what you'll do? You'll go out and seek it elsewhere. However many years later, I become a firefighter, blah, blah, blah. All of that piles onto. And even though, and I was reading in Eric Fromm's book today, The Art of Listening, where he talks about all of that piling on, which is a word that's close to what Levine would say about it accumulating, whereas Stephen Porges would say stuck. It feels like a weight. So when the straw breaks the camel's back, yep, that's what it feels like. One more thing too many. So I came completely apart after I got through the scene. The mom was my patient. We got her all bundled up and into the ambulance with the dad. I can't answer any questions on the scene, and I know that, so I wasn't. But I knew that since that ambulance was still sitting there, that this had become a fatality. Anyway, straw broke the camel's back, and I spent 2 years pretty much being a zombie. And finally, what ended up happening is that, like the third day, I went home, house was empty. This is Christmas Day. Kids were gone. The wife was off house sitting for a week. So I'm all alone and just crying, laying there in bed. for about 2.5 days. Finally, I realized I gotta get out of bed. I gotta go do something. So I was still dressed, still had my uniform on, still had my coat on, still had my boots on. I decided to walk downtown because had no wherewithal to make myself a meal. So I walked downtown. I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to get coffee because that's easiest. Standing there in line, I was social distancing then because I didn't want to talk to anybody. I was really putting off that energy of just, okay, just leave me alone. So, but that didn't work. That didn't work too good. And I felt the tears welling up. And I don't to this day don't even remember how I got to town. I think I know the route. I don't know emotionally how I got to town, but once I was there, I'm still doing the social, trying to, project this energy of don't bother me. It wasn't working. So I felt it coming. So I went back into the back room where I knew nobody was. Typically, not a whole lot of people. The lights were out. So in I went, found a dark corner, and started to cry. And in walks a woman. She was turns out, the communications director of this coffee shop. And she just sat there for a little while, and she was aware of things in town because 5 weeks earlier, a car accident had killed 4 young people. No, 3 out of the 4 in the car. So that was kind of the pall that was hanging on the town until Christmas Day. And now we've got a double pall. Boy, it was heavy. In any event, there I was, and she finally said, "Who takes care of you in your department, your colleagues?" I just said, "You're looking at it. We don't have EAPs. We don't have a human resource department. Nothing." I mean, back where I started, we at least had, if you went up to the pop machine upstairs and hit the root beer button, out came a beer. That was how we handled the dark calls, as I call them, as I refer to them. And we'd sit around and limit ourselves to one. And then if we went down to the VFW or something like that, that's okay. But there at the station, if we needed to take the edge off, that's how we did it. So anyway, it said, out of order on it, but we knew it wasn't. I just said, "So kind of really you're looking at it." And she thought, well, that's not right. So she created a nonprofit called Would Be CareNet. And she eventually asked me to come on to it. But the idea is she said, okay, well, these people are volunteering. So she went to all these different people in the community, the therapists, all kinds of stuff, to get them to volunteer time to us. So some therapists signed up. We had a podiatrist, not a foot massage, toenails. We had a cook, whom we put to use rather efficiently. Anyway, I came on board later, and part of our challenge was not only, so the idea of the Would Be CareNet was a firefighter would go to the website, and there was all these providers, and they could pick whichever provider they wanted to meet with for whatever reason. All we wanted to know from the providers is who you saw and how many sessions. Not who you saw. What I want to say what you saw. What I mean by that is cop, fire, because we covered everybody from dispatcher to the coroner. And so I was kind of guinea pigging all these people. So anyway, and all that was designed to be anonymous, and all the data we wanted was from the providers. What profession did you see, and how many sessions did you see them? Don't care what you said. Don't care what they said. None of that. All we wanted to know was what profession was taking advantage of this free service, and how many times did you see these people? And that was where the system broke down. We got nothing. So I heard personally from people that they were taking advantage of it, but it didn't last long. Anyway, that was 2011 when the straw broke this camel's back, and I muddled around. I zombied, then I ended up with Carenet, and then a firefighter from Canada called my partner, who was the one driving the nonprofit, because he was under the impression that she was the one who was doing all this work. And he was upset about that. She's only got a degree in English. And so she said, no. Explain to him how it worked. And he said, oh, okay, you need to come up to Canada because we're going to be visited by Dr. Berselli. And we had already been looking into what had happened to me. Because A, how am I going to fix this? And B, what the hell was that? Now, I've been a carpenter for 20 years, as a firefighter for 16. I can have a pretty streetwise tongue. So if I let it slip out, pardon me, please. But what the hell had happened to me? I had no idea. When I looked for trauma, as I've said before, I wanted to know what was making you bleed too much, stopping your breathing, and what made you think you were Eleanor Roosevelt, and it was 1897. That was trauma to me. So we were poking around the web, and the thing about searches is you don't have the right language, you're not going to get the right results, and we weren't. And so he invited us up to see Dr. Berselli, and finally we hooked on to Dr. Robert Scare, who lived in Colorado at the time. He is no longer on the planet with us. And so that's what we did. We went with a doctor who followed, read his books. We're like, whoa, okay, this is absolutely new. This is mind-blowing. And then, in fact, it was the book called Trauma Spectrum. And he has another one called The Body Bears the Burden. And then that pointed us to Dr. Levine, who was going to be in our area. So wow, cool. So we went and had this weekend workshop with him. And quite frankly, it was a little underwhelming. Somatic experiencing is what it was, a somatic experiencing weekend. And I love his books. And so, in fact, if he's still one of the primary drivers of my approach to trauma, just because of his ability to describe how it works. And so the training, though, was be baffling. We walked away going, did we miss that? Anyway, shortly after that, a few weeks later, was this event up in Canada with Dr. Berselli. So during one of the early morning breaks, I think it was after hearing Dr. Berselli's story and how he came up with his modality TRE, we sat down with him and said, well, this is what we're looking for. We want to be able to give a tool to firefighters and cops and the coroners and whoever else shows up on a scene, so that, because, as a firefighter, I had all kinds of tools that I used. As a cop, their belts are full of stuff. All right. Everybody loves tools. So, okay, we wanted something. So he told us about being in Syria. I think it was 2012. Is that right? Yeah. I think so. Anyway, the ceasefire, he got smuggled in through, even though he can speak all of those languages, they brought him in through Turkey, and he had 63 people for 5 hours, and he taught them how to tremor. As I discussed it last night. So anyway, I was like, oh, so, and his closing, and so he said, now these people have a tool. Boom. That's what I want. So, okay, we stayed the weekend, and then we got involved with the training and so forth and so on. And we went down for for some training with Dr. Berselli and I'm trying to think, I think it was 2014. Anyway, we're down there in Portland, and Dr. Berselli wanted to interview me because I was a firefighter. And so he had some questions that he wanted to ask. He just wanted me to know the questions, and he said, wing the answers as best you can. I'll edit this all later. And I think that might be on his YouTube page, that interview. I had longer hair, and that was quite a while ago. Wow, 11 years now. Anyway, as he's talking to me, and I had already been doing TRE almost a year, I think. As we're talking, we had, the woman who had started the, we're still with the Would-Be CareNet, the nonprofit, and we started thinking that this issue of trauma is just bigger than emergency responders, which is where we were thinking it was. And boy, we certainly found out it's much bigger. Anyway, at that point in time, during this interview, I started to just kind of move, and we were looking for a business name. And one of the things that we didn't want was to have, Dr. Berselli has trauma prevention, which is lovely. I love it. But since he had it, I couldn't do it. And we just didn't want to focus on the word trauma. So what else was there to work with? And as I was talking, as he was asking me questions, I said, what I've discovered in my own life is that it raised my resilience, my ability to bounce back. And Petra, who is the woman who started the nonprofit, I saw her out of the corner of my eye because she was sitting there watching the whole thing, pointed at me. And I knew what she was pointing at me for, and that was because this was an ongoing discussion with us. And so that became Raise Your Resilience. What am I thinking? All right. So that was back in 2014. We LLC'd in 2015. We followed the traditional TRE model for many years. And then in 2019, when things really got weird and the world got weird, I decided to redo things. And it was this discussion that Petra and I were having anyway. And then we parted ways. And since we had already started having that discussion, because I did not heal in the traditional model, and I felt disingenuous doing that, and I realized, wow, okay, the stuff I'm dealing with just isn't going to work under this. So that's mostly my story. Now the company. I just let things slide off the table. I wasn't marketing, wasn't doing anything, because I redid the program for the most part to follow the stream that my own life took in my own healing process. And then, so it's 2019, just last year, 2024, after doing this and trying to figure out how I'm going to do this. And one thing that Dr. Berselli said to me during that trip where Raise Your Resilience became our reality is, if you want to change the world, heal trauma. I said, sure I do. Now, it was true of my own life. And then, because of, my lack of business knowledge, stuff like that, the business up and down, it was, I wasn't making a living at it. And I thought, for as big as this market is, this is absurd. So I hired a business guy, and I didn't really hire her. It's a free, man, can you believe this? You can get business development counseling here in this county for free. I finally said, okay, why not? What could it hurt? First question, can I see your business plan? What business plan? I don't need a business plan. Okay, what is the purpose of your business? So forth, so how are you going to do that? Okay, maybe I do need a business plan. And so I had no business plan. By the time I finished working with this woman, it was 22 pages. And along the way, a lot of questions were asked. A lot. So when I say it's a unique company, it is. And it's unique because we have a much different trauma healing program than you're going to find anywhere else on the market. And I'm kind of honest about the fact that this isn't going to heal you in 1 year, even though that's how long the program is. It's going to lay a foundation like you've never had before, and you won't need me anymore, even though I'm still available. And whichever provider you do work with that I train, same story. Did you hear that hint? All right. So it's unique also in the fact that I decided that I was going to train other people to do my work. And rather than create something unimaginably difficult, because as I got my certification and then got out and created a business, this business, boy, we had a lot of questions about marketing and using materials and this, that, and the other thing. And there was a lot of us that were out here in the field, honestly, recreating the wheel. I love Dr. Berselli. Businessman, he is not. And I think he might be the first to admit that. I'm not going to go there. I'm trying to do what I think he could have done. I'm using the same tremoring mechanism. I'm just got a different program. One, I think that's better. And those who take the business opportunity will be franchises. So the franchise, the payment for that is you have to go through the Toolbox program and their training program. That's it. Because it's more important for me. I'll come back to that. Okay. Trauma trained. You might know your own trauma, but one thing I discovered when I went through my training program, I really learned about how trauma works. And even just reading Dr. Scare's book and Early with Levine, all these disparate dots of my life started to really clarify the picture of my life from my childhood forward. Trauma experienced, meaning that, and part of this I think happens during healing. And some of us, I'm sorry, we don't forget the crap that I have never forget. That's what I'm trying to say here. I have never forgot being sexually abused. Ever. Some of the times I've been hit, yeah. In fact, I can't remember hardly any of those. Emotional neglect, I can't pinpoint one of those. But they all had impact. And I know that in listening to Dr. Gabor Mate and all kinds of other things, now having conversations with my siblings, I am spot on in my perception of what happened to me. I don't know that my siblings understand that it also happened to them. Anyway, irrelevant. So in this healing process, not only did I more deeply understand what happened to me neurophysiologically, it began to put the picture of my life together, and I was healing my own. This is not true of every therapist. And I use that word loosely, more dictionary-wise, explicitly dictionary. There's a lot. If I learned this lesson in the 80s when I took my drug and alcohol counseling abuse program at University of Minnesota, that a lot of therapists are not healed at all. And I hear the horror stories every week. So being able to put the trauma experience together with trauma healing, now I know how healing works. I know how trauma works, and I know how healing works. And I went through a 2-year training program that was 100% supervised. And that not only included clinical work, I had to work with individuals and I had to work with groups because that's the TRU model. Anyway, and then I had to, if you go to my website, www.raiseyourresilience.com, there's a page on there called The Information That Informed Us. All of that stuff on there, a lot of that was required reading and reporting on. Yeah, it was a training program. It was constant work for 2 years. In any event, all of this, and this is part of my story. I'm not an academic. That's part of my strength. I am, or I was, I'm a retired firefighter. I know what it's like to be homeless. I know what it's like to be an addict. I know a lot of things because I worked and lived Main Street America all of my life. So I'm not coming to you from the ivory tower to tell you how your life is. There's nothing you can say that's going to surprise or shock me. I've been there. So the company is unique in that the people who will be running this company will probably be those who went through the program. So the vice presidents of 5 or 6 different, the finances, marketing, training, because not only do I have the program, I'm creating a course. The program does cost money. I'm not going to try to hide that fact. Not cheap, but in terms of therapy, I've been told that I'm way underpriced for what I deliver. Anyway, more on that tomorrow. So it's a unique company in that my vision, I do have a bold vision. This is my starting point. I want one provider at least in every state. Alaska, Hawaii, and the contiguous United States of America, at least one. And I'll tell you now, but I'm just going to gloss over this. Yes, you can make fairly decent money at this. I structured it that way. A lot of that, you can read more of this on the website because there I spell it out in more detail. All right. The program, and you'll notice here it says powerful evolutionary program because we use what evolution put in us, but it's revolutionary in that it can change the way. And I want to do 2 things. I want to change the way that trauma healing is approached because, yes, you can be cured completely, as I talked about last night, of your trauma. You can be symptom-free. You're not going to hear that from a lot of therapists, even though Freud apparently did think that was true. And so that's what makes it revolutionary, but we're using what evolution has built into us. The process to heal is innate. It's absolutely awesome. So better tools, better focuses because we don't focus on the symptoms. And I've changed that better outcomes to best outcome, symptom free. And after that, the sky's the limit. And for me to achieve my vision, I need other people. I need other people who have, and if they go through the program, they might catch that bug and they realize, wow, there's a lot of people that need this. I want to get on board with this. Yeah, that's excellent. I created the course, which will be cheaper, and I'm going to talk about those differences tomorrow. But I created it for a reason. We might see that. And I'm hoping that others will see that, but I'm still working on that. In any event, this is the story of Raise Your Resilience. It was born out of this nonprofit that we had because we realized this market. And come to find out, guess what? Guess which demographic has the most cases of PTSDs? Oh, veterans. Nope. Oh, emergency responders. Nope. Who's left? Women in civilian life. And I would never have guessed that. And I read that in Ruth Herman's book. And it was okay. She was the head of some department at Harvard, so she's no idiot. Wow. In any event, I'll say it this way, just look up Cynthia Nixon's little video called Be a Lady. And that will pretty sufficiently describe why women in civilian life have the most cases of PTSDs. And if there's any women listening, I'll bet you dollars to donuts you could add to that. Okay, so Raise Your Resilience. It's a unique company. I just told you part of my story, how I came into this. The vision. Yeah, I want to do two things. I want to see people get healed. I guarantee you there's nothing like it. Watching it is amazing. Second of all, I want to change how our systems create trauma, not just in the U.S. I'd love to do this worldwide, but U.S. is the first. In fact, Washington State, I'll start there. That's where I live. And how our systems, okay, ask any domestic violence or rape survivor. Oh, I'll bet you they could give you an earful about how our systems are ass backwards. So I want to change those things. I cannot do that work if I am just seeing clients all the time. And that's what needs to change, as well as healing people. So, and this is one thing the development counselor said to me. She said, if you want to build this business to really be a business, you will no longer be seeing clients like you are. And I had to think about that. The bigger vision is changing the world. And she said, okay, you're going to have to make your business your client. And I know that day will come. And I'm going for it. Because to me, the bigger vision of more people, of other people working with me, so that we have at least 50. I mean, each state could handle quite a few, actually. All of them busy, 40 hours a week, easy. And then being able to speak to their issues in their places, and the company being able to help them do marketing in their area. I don't have all the answers. I know I want people around me that have answers and or are working with people. I'm not going to tell you how the street is in your area. You tell me. I'll help you work it. Makes sense, huh? In any event, that's the company, that's the story, and that's where I'm coming from. So all the stuff that you've heard over the last 4 nights, if you've been watching, and everything else, this is it. Tomorrow night, we are going to talk about what it's like to go through the Toolbox program, and I hope you tune in. For now, good night.